Welcome to the 411 on 420. I'm Darryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
Hey, thanks for joining us today and every Saturday from noon to 1 when we talk about the business of cannabis and hopefully, giving you information and news that you can use to make informed decisions about a quote-unquote budding industry.
That's right. How do we navigate these new laws and policies now that their games have changed?
The games have changed, and there's a lot of information that people need to understand and get right. I mean, there's so many rumors, so many innuendos, so much information that's misinformation that out there that we want to sift through all of that and get the right information out to you so that you can actually think about a industry, and maybe if you're going to get into it, maybe if you're going to just make a judgment about it and so forth, what that is with real facts.
Absolutely. How does this industry occur to the individual varies. And so we're here to just provide some clarity, some transparency with the leaders and front runners that are paving the way.
They are, actually. But when we talk about this stuff, before we ever get started, we like to talk about our nation's veterans and getting them employed because, well, you know, they are the ones that have given us the opportunity to do what we're doing today. The freedoms that we enjoy in this country are basically born on the backs of the individuals who have served the country, and those nation's veterans need to enjoy our participation in society, if you will, by helping them with careers outside of the military once they leave, so that we can, well, integrate them back into society and give them the place that they deserve because they've really earned it.
That's right. We're not talking about giving handouts. We're talking about giving hand up. And there's good reason to consider veterans because they have an accelerated learning curve, and their proven ability to learn new skills and concepts really shine. We're talking about integrity, leadership, code of honor, teamwork. Great
code of ethics as well. You know, they're accountable, they're independent workers and so forth. They have great integrity, as you said. They're fair. We can trust them. And you know what? Like I said, they know how to get stuff done.
That's right. There's something that I think is a trigger for most entrepreneurs out there, and that's efficient performance under pressure.
No doubt about it. There is nothing like getting under pressure when there's bullets flying. I mean, seriously, there has been a lot of opportunity for those individuals to work in very diverse environments and in very harsh environments. So working in your environment is going to be no challenge.
Right.
So actually minimal challenge. But I think that they can perform really well and help you grow your company, whatever that is.
That's right. And the usual environment for most is tight schedules and limited resources.
No doubt about it.
So they know how to deal with that.
So go out there to WorkSource, go out to Operation Good Jobs, go to the local Chamber of Commerce, and go to the Department of Veterans Affairs, wherever you are throughout the United States, and look for your nation's veterans. Search them out if you're looking for an employee, but if you're looking for somebody to perform a task or a service and you're looking for a business to help you, think about veteran-owned businesses, and they are also available for you on the Department of Veterans Affairs website.
Right.
You can search for any type of business that you want.
Very large, fat Rolodex for all the different resources that Darryl's talking about. So, you know, we also need to look at the resources for the veterans, and I think that it's good to be aware of the corporations out there that are giving a hand up with, you know, resume review workshops. And I love to point out there's a place.
There's several places.
Several places that
out
offer workshops for veterans and their families. I mean, if you think
about
Yes,
their families. Think about that. The women and children that are
supporting
them. And you know what?
Right.
25% of the spouses that are of the armed services are not employed. That's a huge amount of unemployment that needs to be rectified.
They move around a lot too. So, you know, it's a lot of uprooting.
So we need to be thinking about that. So anyway, you've got that on your mind right now, and we want you to be thinking about our nation's veterans and so forth. But today we're going to be talking about the law. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the cannabis law and how we got to where we are today. We're going to come back after these short messages, and we're going to be talking with Aaron Pelley of Pelley Law, who was instrumental in, well, changing and, well, navigating the early law and where we are today.
I cannot wait for this discussion.
I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
We'll be back after these short messages.
Few things say more about your business than the quality of the photos in your ads and on your website. Corporate photographer Rick Doms specializes in custom photography for discriminating corporations around the world and right here in Tacoma. Rick's photos have graced the pages of Forbes, Fortune, Barron's, the Wall Street Journal, and the marketing materials of a host of great American companies. Companies like yours. See what Rick Doms photography can do for your business on the web at rickdoms.com. RICKDAHMS.com.
Sweatman Young is proud to celebrate 25 years of construction service throughout South Puget Sound, working together with you to guarantee your satisfaction and offer you a unique 2-year warranty on all work. Let Sweatman Young build your new dream home, remodel your existing home, add an additional deck, outdoor kitchen, a man cave, or even preserve your historic home. Sweatman Young provides the best construction value in South Puget Sound. Visit sweatmanyoung.com today and schedule your free consultation with Bill Sweatman, your personal professional contractor.
Ever get a traffic ticket? Had a bill you couldn't collect? Had a contract you needed advice about, such as a new insurance plan, home, or car loan? We run into these situations routinely throughout our lives. We know we need legal advice, but feel we just can't afford hiring an expensive attorney to help. Legal Shield and your legal team is now your affordable option, allowing each of us to rest assured we can quickly get the help we need for one low monthly fee. Whether it's business or personal legal advice, visit yourlegalteam.info today.
Welcome to the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
Thanks for joining us today and every Saturday from noon to 1 when we talk about the business of cannabis, providing you with news and information you can use to make informed decisions about a, quote, budding industry.
Well, this will be a very informing conversation for those.
We are here today with Aaron Pelley of Pelley Law. Aaron is one of the original cannabis attorneys here in the state of Washington who helped really create the laws and get them, well, noticed and actually protect individual rights and so forth. Welcome, Aaron. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you both. Thanks, Daryl. Thanks, Amy.
Hey, you know, you've been doing this for quite a while. When did you get started?
Almost a decade ago, I started out actually as a criminal defense lawyer. Very early on in my career.
You would think criminal, yeah, I guess, because it was way back, it was criminalized.
Exactly. So all my outlaws became businessmen over the course of time. And so I started out as a criminal defense lawyer, and part of my first case was to actually go and defend a client, and he had about 10 pounds of marijuana in his trunk. And
That's
after
a big joint.
Yeah. So,
That's a lot.
so after I won the case,
oh, excellent. You won the case.
Went to the judge, and I asked the judge to give back my client's marijuana, and the judge agreed to do that. And so we were basically giving back my client 1.5 pound increments. The police department had to every week give back my client 24 ounces. And so I got a lot of press.
That's an interesting process. Why was it only in 24 ounce? I mean, why was it that way?
So in California, he was allowed to carry 10 pounds at a time. In Seattle and in Washington, where he was at, he was only allowed to have 1.5 pounds under his medical authorization. And so the judge said, well, although I can't give him all 10 pounds at once, I could give him 1.5 pounds at a time. And so that was the way that it ended up working out. And people started calling me the pot lawyer. I had been called worse things.
I can imagine.
I decided to embrace that, and it's been nonstop since.
You know, it's interesting. I've talked to several attorneys around the community and so forth that were actually thinking about getting into the law in the cannabis arena, but they were worried about their licenses and they're worried about the federal government and so forth. So can you tell me, you know, what their concern is and why it shouldn't be or should be?
Sure. And actually, I had a really difficult time finding anybody else that could do this besides myself to start with. There's a couple other lawyers that were doing it. And the concern, of course, is that it's still illegal under federal law. So every meeting that I've ever had in the time that I've been doing this, I have to always sit down with everybody and start by saying, everything that we're doing is federally illegal. Everything that we propose to do in this business is going to be federally illegal and is a crime. And I can't protect you in any way from the federal government should they decide to prosecute. So that's where we start.
That's how your conversation has to begin that way.
Every meeting. And by doing that, I'm at least making them appraised of that. And that's what the Bar Association and several bar associations have said that we need to do in order to protect ourselves. And also, so we appraise them of the illegality, but then at the same time, it's my job as an attorney to help them navigate the state laws. And that's why they came there. They didn't ask me about the federal law. So now I've warned them about the criminal behavior. And then on top of that, now I'm able to kind of intelligently advise them on how to navigate the state laws, to start with medical marijuana and over time I-502.
So that preamble is your protection and their warning, if you will.
Right. So yeah, I guess I'm committing a criminal conspiracy every time I sit down with my clients.
I hear that a lot every time I'm talking to somebody about that. We've had
it's
it on
fear-based words
on every show. It's somebody's like, "Oh, we're creating we have a conspiracy. We're just talking about this as a conspiracy." And you're going, "My gosh!" I mean, everybody's worried about conspiracy theories, and for God's sakes, we're doing them every time we have a discussion about this. So it's actually crazy
out
that
in the open.
And you know what? You know, we have the people said, "Hey, we're on board." So in the state of Washington, Colorado, Alaska, Oregon, and beyond, you know, we're actually moving forward. And I think that given that the tribal nations are now able to sell recreational and medicinal marijuana from a legal perspective, granted that opportunity by executive order, that means that basically every state in the union has access to all types of cannabis, and that's an interesting
every
change.
State has something online.
That means that they may or may not have it available right now, but they have the potential to have that access, given that there are 563 plus tribes throughout the entire nation, and I can't think of a single state that doesn't have some kind of reservation. So that's going to be an interesting change in the way that the law is going to be managed and seen. The whole industry is going to be seen over time. Do you see any opportunities for inclusion or growth?
Well, I do, but I think it's a slow and gradual. What you'll see probably, and what we're already seeing right now, is a map that's very similar to the map of say who votes Democrat and who votes Republican. So it's just blues all around the edge and then reds in the middle, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now with marijuana. We're seeing dark green all around the edge. And then as you get closer and closer to the middle of the country and the centralized and southern parts of the states, you see less and less of that legalization movement. And so even though the tribes have got some headway in with the memos from the Department of Justice, they're really approaching this a lot more cautiously than the states are so far.
Oh, they are. I mean, I've talked to a couple of folks at the affiliated actually the AT&I EDC, and those folks were saying, hey, we're going to take it slow because, basically, they have concerns about their populations as well, and then introducing cannabis into those populations. But, it's an industry that has a whole lot of job opportunities and economic development opportunities for an area that needs, economic development. And I think the entire country needs that as well. So that's just, from my perspective and this perspective, we're all about jobs and we're all about building economic opportunity.
And sustainable jobs.
Oh, sustainable jobs, exactly.
Yeah, ones that make sense, that progress the human race and protecting our earth. It seems like it's,
Yeah, and I'm even taking that one step further, but actually trying to reverse some of the damage that's been done. The drug war pretty much is set up in a way where it's the new Jim Crow. It's essentially taking the same person that's engaged in the same conduct. If I'm white, it's very unlikely I'm going to be arrested, but if I'm black, it's very likely that I will be arrested. And starting to reverse the trends of what's going on with the drug war and marijuana. Really, nobody deserves to go to jail over a plant, and I feel that to be true. But if you're going to regulate it, you're going to turn it into something where you're going to regulate it like alcohol. It's a step forward. It's not the step forward that I was going for when I was defending medical and trying to move medical forward, but at the end of the day, it is a step forward.
Well, we had to start somewhere, and I'm sure that it will change throughout and so forth. I mean, it's got to change as we evolve.
Sure.
And so we're talking about you're working in medical. So tell me, when you say you were helping to promote the medical, where were you involved in that to begin with?
I think it just was the nature of my position. I ran my own firm. I got to pick my own clients, and defending medical marijuana made me feel good. It made me feel like I was on the edge of a civil rights movement. And when you sit with these people and you talk to them and you realize the difference that this drug had made in their lives, a positive difference that it made. When you have a little girl who's suffering from, 100 seizures a day, and she goes to like 1 a week because of the oil that she's using, those kind of things, they stay with you.
Oh yeah, that is actually pretty uplifting to find that.
That's a rewarding effort. Right?
And so when you're talking about the help that you've done, I mean, there's been some initiatives. How have you been involved with some of the groundbreaking things? I mean, we've changed your first cases in. You just talked about medicinal marijuana, 10 pounds, and so forth. But as you went through, there were some other things that have occurred. And so what are the most I guess what I'm looking for is the impactful cases that have helped change things.
Well, I don't know if any one case. That is the strange thing about case law and engaging in cases, is that it is very incremental. What did happen, though, or what we saw happen, is that we kept winning. And so taking medical marijuana cases to trial and having an entire jury pool basically say that they wouldn't convict somebody if they thought they were using marijuana medicinally, and to lose the entire jury pool, that's a thing. Like, that sticks with the prosecutor, the elected prosecutor. That makes the papers, and suddenly they start wondering what they're doing prosecuting these cases. So what we saw over time was that the public opinion, especially about medical marijuana, was really changing in a very dynamic way, and to the point where politicians could no longer run the kind of what had been classic, let's be tough on crime, let's be tough on drugs. If you threw marijuana in there, it just wasn't working anymore.
It was kind of a disinformation campaign.
It was, and medical marijuana polls like 76% right now. What we're talking about is something that polls better than Republicans and Democrats combined.
Whoa.
So when people were getting arrested and so forth, they were facing forfeiture of their properties and so forth, seizing their bank accounts. And so how are you adjusting to that? I mean, what was going on there?
Yeah, and it's still going on. I think this, much like marijuana, is, we call it a polite robbery. So it's when the police come in, they smell marijuana, the neighbor complains about it, they walk up to the door, they see something that might suggest that there's a marijuana grow, so they go get a warrant, they kick in the door, they take everything that they want from the house, and they go home.
That's going on today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's really...
Even after legalization, we still have this issue?
What do the laws say about that? I mean, can't you grow personally as a co-op and then...
You can, but the thing about medical marijuana is that you have to, it's an affirmative defense, and the misconception is that it's legal, medical marijuana, and it's not. It's very much the same thing as self-defense, in that you have a right to prove to a jury that you engaged in lawful behavior. But short of that, there's nothing that stops the officer from arresting you. There's nothing that stops a prosecutor from prosecuting you. You can have all your paperwork, everything in line, and they can still essentially run you all the way to the jury.
So we're under the impression that it's legal, but it's really not. We're just actually provided a legal defense.
Correct.
Opportunity.
And when they're running you to a jury, is that based on a federal?
No, it's a state crime still. So it's criminal to grow marijuana in Washington State, and we have an affirmative defense that we can present to a jury if we want to. And so it is much like the example I always like using is self-defense, because if somebody came into your home and they had a knife and they ran at you and you killed them, and the police show up and they see the guy with the knife and they see that he's dead and they see that you did it, they can still arrest you for murder. Now, it's clear it was self-defense, but it doesn't matter. They can still arrest you, and the prosecutor can still prosecute you, and it's up to you and your lawyer to defend yourself in front of the jury, and that's the exact same way medical marijuana works.
So we're not talking about innocent till proven guilty. It's guilty till proven innocent.
Correct, and it's even more frustrating when you're looking at something like forfeiture, because the way forfeiture law works is that they take all your property. You have to essentially send in the paperwork to defend yourself, but you don't have a right to an attorney. And on top of that, your judge in a forfeiture case is the chief of police.
Oh, that's just not
Whoa.
right. that's a deck
So-
stacked against you.
Again, more and more people are finding out about these laws, much like, the marijuana laws and the injustices there. They're seeing things like forfeiture laws and the injustices there, and we're moving away from this. But some of it just has to do with people finding out about it.
So we're just talking about really, I mean, literally, if they come in, and this can be arbitrarily speaking, somebody could come in and, as you said before, break down your door because somebody made a minor complaint or whatever the case may be, forfeit all, and you lose your bank account, your vehicle, all your property gets seized and so forth, and you're sitting here basically homeless, without any cash, without any property, without a vehicle, without anything, and no way to defend yourself. And somebody else saying, well, you know what, the judge in this case is the police chief saying, hey, I'm right doing this, so I really have all the cards.
Right. So, yeah, and especially when you want to come in and say that your officers might not have had probable cause to. So I'm basically asking the chief of police to find that his officers aren't doing their jobs correctly.
That's going to be a tough sell.
That's kind of a conflict of interest. Is that happening with 502 pioneers that are growing for the 502, or is that just for personal grow that you're seeing that type of forfeiture?
I've actually had 502 clients who are in the process of essentially setting up their situation and actually been raided by the police and had to fight tooth and nail to correct that situation and get those felonies dismissed in time so it's worked out.
Is there an area of the state that's more prevalent than there is others, or are some more lenient? I'm just trying to figure out if there's a place you got to worry about.
Well, almost like the way you would guess it is as you get further away from Seattle, the less progressive it gets. And so that isn't
Okay.
to say that it's not progressive in Olympia. I'm just saying that it's a little less progressive, not that
Okay,
it
so
isn't.
the more rural you are, the more conservative the police department might be.
Exactly.
So okay, well, that's understandable.
You've been entrenched with dispensary type medical. So what are your thoughts on this whole integrated onboarding of dispensaries to 502 rec?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I was like, it probably like some of your guests in the last week have talked about. It's been very frustrating, right? The idea that we wanted for medical was to bring as many people into the fold as possible. And I think that the Liquor Control Board might not have, frankly, I think they failed in doing that in this last round, because this was their chance to bring one of the most, sophisticated markets over to them. And instead, they are going to send one of the most sophisticated markets to the black market. There are people that have 20,000 square foot buildings and 7 employees, and they're growing medical marijuana, and they're being told they have to shut down in June.
In July 1, they're done.
But
Correct.
can't they be a priority to onboard into that, license? Because they're not just burger flippers that won the lottery. They're people that have a known track record. They are actually, doing efficacious
Unfortunately, no. So the way the priority system worked was you had to have a bunch of different qualities, one of which was that you applied for 502 the last time it was here, that you have been in business since before December 2012, and that you were up to date on your taxes and you qualify under all the other I-502. But those two qualifications, so you applied for 502 before, a lot of people didn't.
We're against it.
Yeah, at the time. Now
Yeah.
they recognize it's the only game left in town, but they're not being allowed to participate.
Or they chose not to throw down in 2012 or 2013 because of the laws, and it was really a shaky point in time, right?
Throw
Of
down.
its
That's an interesting
inception.
term. I'm
Well,
throwing
that's
down,
what
baby.
I would say. That's what the front runners have been doing. They've been sticking their necks out, working with Aaron Pelley clearly to make this a reality. And CannaCon really did show the world, whoever went, like how sophisticated this
Well, it's
industry
professional.
has become.
Actually, it's become professional. It's
Yeah.
very good. It's changed quite a bit from the first years of a pop-up tent and lawn chair.
Absolutely.
No, it was
and
amazing.
Yeah, insurance companies are lots. I just was blown away.
Well,
by that.
what I saw there was I saw the economic opportunities for really huge growth for business input, just impact in a community with regards to growth and jobs and taxation, just everything that a community wants from an industry
It's
to come
agricultural.
in to
Yeah.
help grow to build their base.
Right, and we're talking farming
Well-
at the end of the day.
Well, it's not just farming. There's processing and retailing
Right.
and everything else. But the jobs are all over, and it doesn't matter what industry. They touch every industry.
They do. It's an emerging market, so that's why I think you see a lot of the excitement, and you see that literally their size doubling every year at CannaCon is because when you have an emerging market, more and more players get involved, and each year, as there becomes more and more acceptance, you see more and more people wanting to become a part of that.
You know, that's interesting. So you talk about all the different things that are happening. What's happening? We talked about medical marijuana shifting into that change. How is it going to be regulated differently? I mean, because there are going to be some significant differences in the way that the dispensary operates currently. But when they go into the state environment, there's going to be some changes in how that operates and some laws and some management. So what's that going to look like?
Well, a lot of it's already, or at least a great deal of it's already on paper, and that would be the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board's rulemaking, and they run the cannabis producer, processor, and retail much the way that they ran alcohol. It's very rigid. It's very rule driven, and so the most striking difference, I think, for most medical marijuana retailers or producer processors that have come over to 502 is that they've always been allowed to police themselves. They've always allowed to also make the best choices based on what made sense. And so...
Because they were approaching it from a healthcare perspective.
Exactly.
Not from an alcohol consumption, which is poison to the body.
Right.
So totally, completely polar opposite.
Well, I think that I think the Liquor Cannabis Board is actually, from a regulatory standpoint, how can they regulate things for, one, health reasons? I think they're thinking about, just from a devil's advocate standpoint, I think they're thinking about tracking traceability and so forth, so they get quality product and all those kinds of things. But also, when we're talking about certification, if you will, from a dispensary standpoint, so ability to sell medical versus just recreational, there's going to have to be a license for that specifically. And some of the recreational are applying for the medicinal opportunity, and some of them are just going to be specifically medicinal. And how does that all work out?
I don't think
they haven't figured it out. The way that it is right now is they don't know. They basically have said, we're going to allow you to get a medical endorsement. We don't know what that means. We don't know what it'll do. We don't know what it'll look like. So,
but we know there's a specific number of them.
We know that, but short of that, we don't know anything about what the medical side of this system is going to look like. And so, and I try not to predict. One thing I'm not good at, it's predicting. Well, if I thought I could have had a black president and a marijuana lollipop in 2015. I would have laughed myself out of the room.
10 years ago, you would have said, nah, not going to happen, right?
Do you think it's possible that the dispensaries could be match-made with the 502, like matchmaking those entities?
They're not doing that, so they're just literally, if you either make it or you don't. You're either a priority one or you don't. And then on top of that, the way it's working right now is it's a land race. The sooner you get built out, is the sooner the chance you're going to be one of the 222
Was it
stores.
a land race or is it lotto? Because we had a lotto before. Now it's a land race?
Now it's a land race.
Okay. So in other words, it's income, and you have to have investment opportunity. You have to have cash. And so what's that going to take? I tell you what, let's take a break, come back after these short messages, and we'll talk about how you break into that arena if you haven't already gotten there. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
We'll be right back. And now, your Management Minute with Doug Kirkpatrick, author of Beyond Empowerment, The Age of the Self-Managed Organization.
Like staccato bursts of data from the interstellar spacecraft Voyager, the workplaces of the future are sending new messages to the people that will soon be joining them. The new messages are replacing the outdated memos crafted for the industrial age when information moved at the speed of Morse code. One key message, we trust you. This message replaces the standard subliminal message that we don't trust you. Examples of bad practices abound, including absurdly restrictive limits on purchasing authority and elaborate inventory controls on disposable work supplies. How about simply giving people the freedom to implement solutions to problems and to seize opportunities in the workplace if they're equipped to do so? Brian Carney and Isaac Getz, quoting former Chaparral Steel CEO Gordon Forward in their book Freedom Incorporated, describe the current reality as managing for the 3%. In other words, creating rules to control the small number of non-conforming employees who might misuse their freedom while suppressing the innovation of the 97% who just want to do a good job. That's the recipe for a disengaging workplace. Let's try trust instead.
Few things say more about your business than the quality of the photos photos in your ads and on your website. Corporate photographer Rick Dom specializes in custom photography for discriminating corporations around the world and right here in Tacoma. Rick's photos have graced the pages of Forbes, Fortune, Barron's, the Wall Street Journal, and the marketing materials of a host of great American companies. Companies like yours. See what Rick Dom's photography can do for your business on the web at rickdoms.com. RICKDAHMS.com.
Sweatman Young is proud to celebrate 25 years of construction service throughout South Puget Sound, working together with you to guarantee your satisfaction and offer you a unique 2-year warranty on all work. Let Sweatman Young build your new dream home, remodel your existing home, add an additional deck, outdoor kitchen, a man cave, or even preserve your historic home. Sweatman Young provides the best construction value in South Puget Sound. Visit sweatmanyoung.com today and schedule your free consultation with Bill Sweatman, your personal professional contractor.
Ever get a traffic ticket? Had a bill you couldn't collect? Had a contract you needed advice about, such as a new insurance plan, home, or car loan? We run into these situations routinely throughout our lives. We know we need legal advice, but feel we just can't afford hiring an expensive attorney to help. Legal Shield and your legal team is now your affordable option, allowing each of us to rest assured we can quickly get the help we need for one low monthly fee. Whether it's business or personal legal advice, visit yourlegalteam.info today.
Welcome to the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
Thanks for joining us today and every Saturday from noon to 1 when we talk about the business of cannabis, helping you with news and information you can use to make informed decisions about a quote-unquote budding industry. Hey, we are here today with Aaron Pelley from Pelley Law, and we're talking about cannabis law. We're talking about the growth of the industry, and we're talking about the changes that we can see going forward in the industry. And we're talking about entry into the industry before the break, and we're talking. Tell us about what people can expect when they're talking about getting into the industry today. And it's an investment. I mean, how much is it going to take to get in there, and is it really viable, and so forth? Because I hear
a retailer or as a grower. Or
yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of different opportunities. So, what does that cost? And it's because it isn't just going to happen like, oh, I got $20 and I can jump in. There's some significant investment and time.
Right, and so a lot of it had to do with being in the right place at the right time. So if you were one of the people that applied for a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 producer processor license, you essentially dropped, less than $1,000, right around $1,000, and that got your license. And so those folks, though, over time have essentially been reselling. So there's a whole resale market of producer processors, and the same thing with retailers, the priority ones we were talking about. They just opened up this new group. And what you have is people who are priority one that are going and reselling their priority one license to other people that have, like you were pointing out, the resources to pull it off. And so
there's a significant amount of cash that's involved. I mean, you just don't start a grow operation in your garage, and there's a significant amount of infrastructure that has to be in place with regards to security and traceability and all the different state required things.
Sure. So you can easily spend $50,000 in cameras alone on a Tier 3, and that's just the cameras.
And that's before you start talking about employees, transportation,
lights,
and everything else that goes along with it. So I'm under the impression it's about $500,000 to $1 million to get going in a grow operation of any significant size.
I think so. I've seen some people do some amazing stuff on shoestring budgets in outdoor grows in Eastern Washington, but I think also with what comes with that is that the quality of cannabis might be a little bit different than what you get in an indoor grow.
Well, yeah, that's true. You do have a longer growing season and opportunity over there, but everybody goes for the bling, I understand, with regards to the indoor. And we just visited a grow operation in Bellevue the other day, where it was interesting how they were stacked. I mean, there were actually 2 tiers.
Well, my
inside
jaw
of one
dropped.
building.
I couldn't believe what I saw.
We were. I mean, there was one on the very 30-foot ceilings and so forth. But
oh yeah, I've been to that grow. I know who you're talking about.
Two levels of that. So interesting.
And very sophisticated.
Very sophisticated operation, and I'm certain that it was more than $50K.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I wouldn't say.
I think that was just for the racks to put it together.
Right.
Well, I could definitely tell that if you're talking about a high-end product, that the farm is probably going to be well taken care of.
Right, right. And so the same thing is going to happen with your stores, right? So, if you want to have a kind of a low rent looking store, you might end up with low rent clients. But if you're going to really try and put something together that's amazing at a retail level and have the right kind of products on the shelves, then it's probably going to cost a lot more.
So when we're looking at this thing and we're saying, okay, all these different variations on a theme with regards to the different grows, from the outdoor grow to the indoor grow to the sophistication to the high end to the low end, and we're still getting our feet wet, so to speak, even though we've been in it for almost a year and a half now, from a legal standpoint, actually people growing and selling and so forth. We're still way behind Colorado. And why do they have such a larger, thriving medical market and recreational market than we do in such a very
different?
In a short period of time? What's that big differentiator?
So actually, what was great about Colorado was they actually started out by regulating medical, and so they had written it into
they flipped it.
Exactly. So they had an entire regulated system that said, if you're doing this way, this is the right way to do it under medical marijuana. And then what they did was they only let people that were in medical transition over into retail, and that happened a couple years later. And so they had this entire integrated system going up, whereas in Washington, we had no regulation of medical. We started with rec, and then essentially what happened was a bunch of people went in with lobbyists and said, medical is the reason we're not successful. Get rid of them. And they've pretty much cut off the spigot of medical.
So is Oregon following suit after Washington or Colorado?
I think they're doing an amazing job at looking at both and figuring out what's working and what isn't. And I think you'll see that state after state that's what they're going to do. I mean, I wouldn't even argue that we've made mistakes in the way we've written these laws and how we've done this. And so I think the other states are trying to learn from ours.
I think that, we're talking about that. We have Washington, Oregon, and California coming up with the medical right now. And actually, I believe they're looking at recreational as well.
What about Alaska?
Yeah,
Alaska, but I'm just thinking about contiguous borders right now.
And Mexico, they wanted to deregulate.
Well, yeah, but Canada as well. But I mean, thinking about the contiguous border, wherever they touch, and we still have problems with transportation across borders, yet it's legal in all those states, but you can't really transport across borders. So what is that?
When will it be unified?
I don't know. I think that once the feds get involved, and until then, the feds take issue, and that's that Cole memo with those 8 deadly sins of what they do and don't want, and one of them is interstate travel.
Talk about that Cole memo, because we're not all familiar with that.
Yeah, what is that
memo?
So
actually, there's been a few memos, but the most recent one essentially says that we have some things we care about while you, Washington and Colorado, go forward in your grand experiment. And what they include are, we don't want marijuana on federal land. We don't want marijuana on near schools and playgrounds. We don't want marijuana crossing state lines. The one on federal lands is actually really fascinating. Every year, right around summertime, I'll start getting phone calls from people who are going either camping or they're going up to Mount Rainier or they're going somewhere, and they get pulled over by a park ranger, and the park ranger says, I smell marijuana, and they're like, yeah, it's legal. Here's my marijuana. And they show up this little tiny bag, and they're like, nope. And then they give them a federal misdemeanor where they have to show up in court in Tacoma and defend themselves for possessing a controlled substance.
So that's a good note for everybody to make.
Yeah,
when you're hiking.
Yeah, be aware of whether you're on federal land. I mean, there's spots in Washington where you can be driving on a freeway, and it's a state freeway, and all of a sudden you're committing federal crimes, and you're under the legal authority of the park rangers, and they are very excitable people from the reports that I read.
Well, I talked to somebody who pulled over on their motorcycle, and they were parked on the freeway over by JBLM, and literally just off the freeway and some MPs arrested them and were ticketing them right there because they were taking a break and saying, hey, what are you guys doing right here? And you're possessing things. Yep. And so there was an interesting, like, hold on, I'm stuck on a freeway and I'm just going down the road. And they didn't know that they were actually on federal land because they were passing through and they just happened to be on an off ramp.
Yeah, it turns out that doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. So you
never know when you're going to bump into a nosy Nelly.
So what's the difference between a cannabis business and any other business startup that you found out? I mean, there's some besides the regulations and so forth.
I mean, in some ways, there is none, but at the same time, there is. So I would say that it's helpful in the cannabis industry to understand the culture. It's to understand the laws, to understand the rules, to know that you're good at what you're doing. If you're not good at what you're doing, that you know who to hire to do it. And so if you just change the word cannabis to cantaloupes, as you were pointing out, in some sense, it is just
corn.
Agriculture, right? But at the same time, there's a depth of complexity with the regulations and kind of navigating the market itself.
Well, the culture you talked about is a little different than anywhere else, because there is a big difference in the culture and so forth. I've kind of noticed that as we go through that there are a lot of people who are self-taught all the way throughout the industry, and there's no real standards going on. I mean, with regards to growing, processing, or retailing, it's all figuring it out as we go along the way, and we've got to come to some kind of methodology along the way so people can know what to expect from a hiring standpoint. I mean, if you're going to grow, I mean, you got to know what you're getting from people that you're hiring, and you got to know what people are doing. So as a consumer, you can say, that's what I like. And so that's why I think we're here to talk about that kind of stuff.
And they're starting to bring some of those things up. And I think different organizations are going to come forward, and they're going to start to be leaders in that. So we're seeing something like, this weekend where they were certifying bud tenders.
Exactly.
They were doing something.
Amy was a participant.
Yeah,
Amy, you were
I enjoyed that. It was a 4-hour stint. It was
Right.
really good with Jerry.
Yeah, and so we're seeing this where people want to do something where they're not allowed to say that it's certified organic, but what can we come up with? What kind of standard can we come up with? What kind of stamp can we put on this? That's an industry standard that says it was organic, and so those are the things that we're doing.
We asked Mayor Strickland about, she's an education person, if you will, and we talked about standardization, we talked about education and so forth, and we always, and I keep talking about the fact that this industry is a lot like viticulture. We're literally like the wine industry. It just came in here, and all of a sudden it's taking over. But we have to come up with some standardization. We have to get some education. There are jobs that are growing exponentially right now, and we don't know what we're looking for. And we need people to be educated in agriculture, because hey, this is a farming industry with regards to the growth. And then the processing. There's a whole lot of manufacturing that goes on to that, whether it's food based or chemical, or actually all the different. There's so many variations on a theme.
Food based,
there's so many different ingestion or smoking, however,
or servings.
There's just a whole lot.
Or CBD versus THC, and if should they be combined together,
or laboratories even. I mean,
Yeah.
understanding how to process and how to test. And
well, in the bud tenders course, one thing that we did learn was there's 2 different ways to test, and one's with liquid and one's with a gas, and so tests are coming out differently for the same flower, but you're also getting different reads. So
And everyone wants that high number.
well, Jerry, see, got to take the bud tenders course to
No,
understand. But you know what Jerry's doing, with the help of Canacon, is educating the retailers as to your bud tenders are the face of the industry. They are the access point to the consumer. And it's that bud tender is the one that is going to make that experience with the consumer.
well, that person is the first person the first contact.
That's right.
So arguably, you're a bartender.
That's right. And someone flies in from Oklahoma, never had it before. They get off the plane. What's the first place they go before they even check into a hotel?
Right.
Right. And if they've never had it before, that bud tender really needs to be, educated as to how to handle someone who really could be put in a precarious situation, maybe on couch lock, if they, eat a candy bar that's 10 servings, but they're just eating a candy bar.
Right.
They go, oh yeah, I want some of those malted milk balls, and only one is really good, but I just ate a whole pack.
Standardization and education is very important, and so I would love to know from a legal standpoint where you see that going.
I see it going slowly, and again, because it's a state by state experiment, and so it's kind of, and since the LCB is the only one that's been essentially tasked with dealing all this, I mean, think about
With
any
research?
other. Well, not with research, but just whether things are going to be standardized or not, and how they'll be standardized. So they're the ones that are coming up with these rules right now. But in what other industry can you have food that isn't regulated by the Department of Health? So we have all these different things that are going on right now and nobody else really wants to get involved and jump in. Department of Agriculture, why aren't they a part of the producer processor?
Right.
So
that's where we really need to get these deschedule everything and say, let's get in here and start
Helping the farmers.
with an industry that has so much opportunity to change the face of the country with regards to economic opportunities. And we have a younger generation that is accepting. We're at 60+% of acceptance across the United States, and that's across the entire United States, not just our state.
Right.
So if that's the case, then adoption should go much quicker than we think over the course of the next few years, given the fact that these tax dollars are being created in each of these states that have legalized recreational and medicinal marijuana, or cannabis, if you will. Those other states that are sitting here hurting are going to go, whoa, we're doing this underground thing and we really need to collect that money. Why don't we just do that?
Yeah, the economic argument will almost always win the day once we kind of tip that threshold.
I heard there was a rumor that when California goes rec, that the whole nation will turn. Would you agree with that, or?
They have a huge market for cannabis consumption down there. So I think that there's an argument for that. There's kind of an echo chamber of like what's going to happen next. I have some friends who are much older than me that have been kind of in the trenches fighting the drug war back when I was still in high school. And they were all on the 5-year plan. And they said every year you'd ask them, like, how long before this is all legal? And they say, I think in the next 5 years. And so whenever I find myself wanting to say that, I think about my friends who have been saying that since the 70s. I want this to happen. I want that legalization. But I also recognize we have to just kind of slowly take each win that we get.
Well, I think given the election year process, it might be the next 12.
Have you seen?
I mean, just because it is election year every 2 to 4 years, when we have a decent election, and it has to get on the ballot every time, and only the time when we have a significant number of voters is in a presidential election.
Right.
Unless, of course, we finally get some people out there saying, you know what, we need to take back, quote unquote, the opportunity to govern ourselves and get out there and vote.
Let's move with the quickness.
Right.
Have you seen any people that have been incarcerated before get exonerated from, the new laws? They get caught with a joint and now they're in jail for 3 years. Where is that?
So I wish Bob was here that I was speaking a panel with, but they've been they have a program through.
And you, Bob?
So I'm Warshaft. He's was on the panel with me, and he's part of the normal legal committee at HempFest.
Oh, okay.
He's on the HempFest.
What was the panel about?
It was a legal panel. It was pretty much question and answer, kind of like what we're doing here.
Okay.
So, but they're adopting lifers that are doing life in prison over growing marijuana or possessing marijuana. And they had adopted 2 of them last year, and both of them were exonerated within a year of them adopting those 2, and now they've adopted a few more. And so they're essentially trying these programs where people are spending life in prison over marijuana, which is...
So they're trying to reverse their decisions and get them out.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen
and just bring
campaigns
attention
for
to
like
that.
Mark Emery. Who is Mark Emery?
So Mark Emery, also known as the Prince of Pot, was in jail for selling marijuana seeds and also...
Seeds?
Yeah, that was his primary business, but it was really what he was doing was he was taking a lot of money and putting it into legalization movements down here in the United States. And eventually, if the short version of the story is the feds caught up with him, and he ended up doing about 5 years. He's out now
because he was acting as a political action committee.
Right.
There was just a huge
that would be
campaign.
the way that I would present it. But.
Right. I just remember seeing a huge campaign of Free Mark Emery, and I was kind of interested to know what his story was. I'm sure there's more like him.
Yeah, there is, and that's a great story. I did a very truncated version, but if you look it up online, it's kind of amazing what he went through.
Well, let's take a break, come back after these short messages, and we'll talk more with Aaron Pelley about what's happening in the world of cannabis and the changes going on in the law and how we can see things moving forward. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
We'll be right back after these short messages.
Few things say more about your business than the quality of the photos in your ads and on your website. Corporate photographer Rick Doms specializes in custom photography for discriminating corporations around the world and right here in Tacoma. Rick's photos have graced the pages of Forbes, Fortune, Barron's, the Wall Street Journal, and the marketing materials of a host of great American companies. Companies like yours. See what Rick Doms photography can do for your business on the web at rickdoms.com. RICKDAHMS.com.
Sweatman Young is proud to celebrate 25 years of construction service throughout South Puget Sound, working together with you to guarantee your satisfaction and offer you a unique 2-year warranty on all work. Let Sweatman Young build your new dream home, remodel your existing home, add an additional deck, outdoor kitchen, a man cave, or even preserve your historic home. Sweatman Young provides the best construction value in South Puget Sound. Visit sweatmanyoung.com today and schedule your free consultation with Bill Sweatman Bowman, your personal professional contractor.
Ever get a traffic ticket? Had a bill you couldn't collect? Had a contract you needed advice about, such as a new insurance plan, home, or car loan? We run into these situations routinely throughout our lives. We know we need legal advice, but feel we just can't afford hiring an expensive attorney to help. Legal Shield and your legal team is now your affordable option, allowing each of us to rest assured we can quickly get the help we need for one low monthly fee. Whether it's business or personal legal advice, visit yourlegalteam.info today.
Welcome back to the 411 on 420. I'm Daryl Bowman, your business and IT professional in cannabis.
And I'm Amy Ansel, your cannabis partner strategist.
Thanks again for joining us today and every Saturday from noon to 1 when we talk about news and information you can use to make informed decisions about a budding industry called cannabis. And, well, we want you to go out to our website at 411on420.biz and check us out, see what we've got going on there, look at our podcast and so forth. Give us an email to say what you're thinking and what kind of shows you're interested in seeing. And check us out, download all of our podcasts, listen to them, and subscribe.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we'd love to hear from what you have to say. And, I think to go on Facebook. I think we're on Facebook. I think we're on YouTube. We've got a few other places that we are. And so go check us all out on those things and let us know what you're thinking. But we are here with Aaron Pelley today. We're talking about cannabis law and the future of cannabis law. And when we left, we were talking about the industry and how it's moving forward and literally how changes are people are getting out of being exonerated. And so what about that? Is there more of that happening in this state, or is it just
Not a great deal in this state, because a lot of what we did when we decriminalized marijuana here was we essentially decriminalized less than an ounce. And so most of the people that were getting charged for something like that were
5, 10
it's
pounds, 100 pounds?
misdemeanor crimes is less than an ounce, right? So
Right.
There's anything over 20, essentially anybody that was suffering from the drug laws that we corrected by decriminalizing marijuana in those small amounts has since been long over.
Well, I've heard people literally in stage 4 cancer going to jail over this. So
right, and
that's scary.
It is scary, and that's people that are probably growing or trying to, and that's probably one of the frustrations of what we're seeing with this last legislative session, where they took patients who were only allowed to grow 15 plants and dropped them down to 6. And for people that eat their cannabis, or for people that are treating cancer, and especially people that are doing Rick Simpson's oil, that's not enough. 6 plants is not enough.
They have a different
No,
regimen.
actually, they changed it from to a co-op. I think it was from a collective to a co-op. And what's that differentiator?
So so the collective gardens used to be allowed to have 45 plants, and arguably you could have a number of collective gardens in one tax parcel. They've lowered it to one collective garden per tax parcel, and that's 60
called it
plants.
a co-op instead.
60 plants, but they're still not allowing a medical marijuana patient to possess more than 3 ounces, or individually 6 plants if they join the registry, and 4 plants if they don't.
I think I read something about the fact that you couldn't have monetary compensation for this anymore. You could, and everybody had to actually be an owner in that spot. So
correct. And also follow all the same rules as any other producer processor that's growing.
That's a big change.
That is a big change.
And so it's going to really cut down on what they're going to. Like you said, it takes a lot of product, if you will, to create the oil to help with those cancer issues.
So my hope is that recreational will step up, which is the promise that we've been given, and that they'll start to provide those same products that patients were using and purchasing, getting and growing on their own before they made these legal changes.
Is there any possibility of working with the LCB to help navigate them to be creating the right policies that make sense?
Well, that about wraps up our time today. Looks like this interview went just a little bit long, so I tell you what, why don't you join us at 411 on 420.biz and listen to the rest of this exciting interview. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week on the 411 on 420.